Allow me to take this opportunity to introduce to all of you our guest speaker. He oversees the development and strategic direction of the core components of the Moodle Learning Management System. He has served as platform manager at Moodle for 18 months, bringing over a decade of experience with that spans development, administration, implementation, and sales. He has prior experience collaborating closely with the higher education sector for several years and has assisted organizations of various types in optimizing their utilization of Moodle LMS instances. His solid technical skills, extensive hands-on experience with Moodle LMS, and exceptional leadership abilities have enabled him to effectively oversee large-scale projects and implement robust and resilient solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a warm hand of applause to our guest speaker, Mr. Matt Port.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me just to start? Yes, excellent. It's always the hardest part of any presentation is the A there. I can say without a doubt that this has been the best start to a Moodlemoot I've ever been to. I almost don't feel cool enough to be standing up on stage here, so it's quite an honour to be here, and I'm always excited to both be at Moodlemoots talking about Moodle LMS, but more importantly, hearing everybody else's stories and talking to people who use LMS. I think it's a very, very important thing. Just wanted to there we go. Just want to sort of kick off and just give a quick overview of sort of where my position as the head of platform solutions sort of fits into everything and how my team sort of fits into everything, just to give you a bit of an overview. Here just up on the slide is just a summary of all of the products and services that we look after at Moodle HQ. And sitting right in the middle, as it should, is Moodle LMS. And because, as you know, Moodle LMS is quite a big piece of software, we actually look after it across two distinct departments. And in the middle here is the platform solutions team, which is the team that myself and my colleagues look after. And we look after all of the core components of Moodle LMS, so things like administration, user management, security, integrations, APIs, and all that sort of thing. Then wrapped around the platform solutions is the educational solutions team, and they look after all of the educational components of LMS, so things like all of your courses and your activities and things. And look, we do work very closely together, as you can imagine, and there is some overlap on what we do. But I'm the one who's lucky enough to be here talking about LMS today, which again I'm really very, very excited about. In terms of what I'll go through today, I'm going to give an overview of some of the new things that came out in version 4.4 of our LMS, which is the most recent version. I'm then going to spend some time talking about the work that we're doing around AI in LMS, and it's very much in line with the introduction and the theme of today's conference. And then at the end, providing I don't talk for too long, I'll give a bit of a sneak peek of some of the things that we're working on in 4.5 and the sort of next versions of LMS. So getting into things, 4.4 was released just over a month ago on the 22nd of April. It feels like a day ago to me, but it is already a month. It had 287 new features and improvements. And I'm not going to go through all of those today, although I think some of my colleagues can think I can speak fast enough to do that, but I'm not going to try. Instead, I'm just going to go through some of the headline features and some of the other cool things in the release. So, starting in the best place for an LMS, which is on the course page as a student, over the last several versions of LMS, we've really been working to add incremental improvement to how the course page is presented and how students access their learning materials. And we've really continued this in 4.4. This is the new layout that was evolved in 4.4 gives a lot more prominence to the course sections themselves. It's easier to see where sections start and stop, as well as the activities that are in each section. Specifically on the slide, you'll be able to see that each section now has this containing border around the section, and that sort of makes it easier to see what content is in the section and see what activities relate to the sections themselves. Just sort of in contrast to 4.3 and earlier versions, the activities had a border and the sections didn't, so we've sort of made that basically just easier to see the course structure and how it lines up with that sort of navigation view on the left. We've made changes to the navigation of individual sections of a course as well. So now when you click the heading of a course section from the main page of a course or from the left-hand side of the navigation there, you're presented with a view of just that single section. And again, this is just to help students sort of focus on the information they're interested in without sort of getting overwhelmed by other information. It's a change in both how you navigate to it and how it's displayed in 4.4. If you're familiar with the previous sort of single section overview, the general section in a course was always shown. We'll remove that again just to sort of help students focus on the things that are important to them. You may have noticed on those previous first slides, we've updated the activity and resource icons in 4.4. They have a more modern design now and it's sort of less heavy as part of the course structure. Just again, sort of trying to reduce that visual load for students and help them focus. But we've also updated the colour scheme of the activities and we've grouped them by colour. So you can see they're grouped by colour for assessment, collaboration, communication, interactive resources and interactive learning, I should say, and resources. And this is to help both students and teachers identify the type of learning asset each of those activities relates to. Now, the icon colour selection looks good, but it actually wasn't random. We did quite a lot of research with our users to help both how would they like to group those activities into those groups, but also the colours that represented those groups and what they sort of meant from a cognitive perspective. But more than that, we really made sure that those colours were accessibility compliant. They meet the WCAG compliance for contrast. And in addition to that, we did the best that we could to make sure that those colours are visually distinguishable for people who perceive colour differently or have colour blindness. And you can see that the new colours perform much better in this regard than the previous ones did. And one of the reasons I really wanted to call this out specifically is just as a demonstration of how we're working continuously to improve accessibility in LMS and how we're including accessibility right from our design all the way through delivery. It's not something we're just sort of tacking on at the end or adding as an additional thing. It's something we're doing right through the design and delivery process. Just finally, on the topic of the icons, when you use the file resource, you now get an indication of the type of file that it is. So if it's a PDF, you get the PDF icon right there in the resource. Just again, helping students and teachers, identify and focus on the type of their learning. So for teachers and course editors, we've made it easier to identify how and where to add course activities, and you'll sort of see that sort of cycle through on the video that's playing. There's a much clearer indication of the borders of content areas, so you can see what content relates to what activity. And also where activities can be added when you're editing and creating your course as a teacher is much easier to find. And these two things together are really aimed at sort of reducing sort of both the time spent by teachers when they're editing their course and sort of solve some of those frustrations as well, which is very, very important. The last thing that I will mention on the course layouts themselves is we've renamed the topics format that a lot of you will be familiar with to custom sections, so just to better represent what it actually does. And when you create a custom sections course now, you don't get the numbers by default in the section titles. A lot of feedback that people didn't like that, spent a lot of time removing them, so they're off now by default. The thing that you will see on the slide here is a new form element that we introduced in Moodle 4.3, and we're starting to roll it out more and more in our forms. And it's really, really good, and I really like it because it gives you contextual information about the choice that you're about to make, not just the choice itself. So you don't need to jump around and switch context. You can actually sort of understand the choices presented to you instead of just making a choice. Small thing, but again, anything that can save time for teachers and students and everybody is a better thing, and I actually quite like this as a feature. Sort of moving from the course into some of the activity changes now. There's been quite a few, but there's just a couple that I want to highlight today. There is a very popular community plugin for quiz called the Ordering Question Type, and we've actually worked and taken that community plugin and put it in LMS and now made it available for everybody, and it's now under our stewardship. If you're not familiar with that as a plugin, it allows teachers to define a list of short answers to a question, and students can order those either by dragging and dropping them or using the interface element, and then the order is important as part of the grade. Part of the work that we did when we brought this into core was improve the accessibility of the functionality, so just to make it more equitable for students and being able to use in more context. I will say a big thanks to our Moodle Users Association. They sponsored this functionality and made it possible to include in the 4.4, so we're always grateful for their contributions. On the forum side of things, there's a couple of additions and changes that I'll sort of speak to. For administrators, there's now a new default that allows you to set the subscription type for forums. Now, previously the default was always 4 subscriptions, but now administrators can set a default that meets the best needs of their organisations. You can still override it at a course level if you're a teacher, but having sort of good defaults in a Moodle site set up for your teachers and your managers and your learners really just sort of saves everybody time, and it's a good thing to have. Also, just on the forums, if you've got courses that work with students in groups, it's now much easier to post a copy of a post by a teacher to all of the groups in that course. You can see on the screen here, although I think it is a little bit small, I'm possibly standing right in front of it, that there is just this little tick box that you can check right under the message that allows you to easily copy a post to all the groups. This isn't actually a new feature, but it was buried in the advanced settings previously. We've just made it much easier now to access and improvement there. I will also say that both of these forum improvements were contributed by our community, so we're always grateful for the work that all of our community developers do and help us enhancing LMS. On the sort of the content creation side, and this is for teachers and students and anyone who really creates content in their LMS, we've made it much easier to add images via the Tiny MCE editor. The workflow is much more streamlined, there's an improved user interface, and the most common way that users add images to the LMS is directly from their computer, either via drag and drop or via the file picker, which you can see here. So these are now right up front with the functionality, so basically in most cases it's only 2 clicks now when you're adding an image into LMS. We've also simplified the overall user interface and the workflow, but we've still managed to keep all the advanced features there as well. If you're someone like me who does a lot of blog posts and forum updates and things and adding images all the time, you will love this. This is my favourite feature. I'm allowed to have favourites, I think. Sort of zooming out to the site level now, the very popular course upload tool, we've made that based on a capability now, and we've given that capability to managers by default. So this means that uploading courses into your LMS via a file to create those course shells is no longer limited to your site administrators. So your managers and your academic support staff can now better manage their own courses and also relieve some of the pressure off your administrators. This was the most voted issue by the community in 4.4. It had about 80 or so community votes, and so it's always good to be able to include those in the platform as well. Still on the administrator side of things, the user management tool in LMS, so this is if you're an administrator, this is the main way that you interact and manage a lot of the user functions. It's now powered by the report builder functionality in LMS, and that's allowed us to do a few things. The first is you get all the cool report builder features, you get all the filters, you get the dynamic updates and all of that sort of thing that you can sort of see scrolling through now. But it's allowed us to do a couple of other things. One little thing, but quite good if you're an administrator, is you no longer get redirected to a new page when you try and delete the user. You just get a nice confirmation mode as well. So you still get a confirmation so you don't accidentally delete anybody, but you're not getting this page reload and this context shift and things like that. Just again, anything we can do to make administrators' lives easier is a good thing. And the final thing on this functionality that Report Builders allow us to do is we've added bulk actions directly to that user management tool. So things that administrators will do a lot, like sending messages to users or downloading groups of users and things like that, is all now accessible from the one spot. It is worth mentioning this was actually functionality that started in our workplace product, and now it's been donated back by that team to LMS. And we always try every release to donate at least one thing from workplace down to LMS, and it was a quite good one this time. Sort of switching to the security side of things, and it was actually really, really good to participate in the security workshop yesterday. For those who were there, that was some awesome presentations and some awesome discussion. But on sort of security side of LMS overall, we added support for multi-factor authentication in LMS in version 4.3. So the ability to use things like authenticator apps and hardware tokens to add an extra layer of security. In 4.4, we extended this by now adding SMS support, so you can now get that extra code delivered straight to your mobile phone via SMS, and be able to use that as part of multi-factor authentication. The other improvement we made to multi-factor authentication, and this is very much on your user side of things, is the management and setup experience is much improved in 4.4. The factors that your organisation makes available and the ones that you have configured as a user are much easier to set up and manage. And you can see that sort of improved experience on the video here. And this is just sort of part of our ongoing commitment to this as functionality. We do take security very seriously in the LMS teams, and this is just a good example of that. And we'll be further improving this functionality in 4.5. The functionality coming in 4.5 will be focused a bit more on administrators. There's a lot of settings in MFA, and we want to make that experience best for our administrators. Sort of shifting out of, I suppose, the user-facing part of the LMS now, I wanted to talk a little bit about things that we're doing to improve the development experience in LMS. So each one of these, like everything in software development, has a lot of components and can be quite deep. So I've linked QR codes that will take you to more information on each of these, and I'll just give a quick overview now. If you do actually see QR codes anywhere through my presentation, they will generally link to more information about that particular thing. But just giving these as a quick overview, dependency injection. So if you're not familiar with that as a construct, it basically makes code more decoupled and improves reusability, and makes things like unit testing and unit testing development much easier. And anything that can improve test coverage is a very big win. We've implemented the PSR20 clock interface. Basically, if you've had anything to do with computer science, you know that working with times and dates is painful. It always seems to be more painful if you see developers in the audience nodding. It's always a common joke. So PSR20 just makes it much easier to work with time in Moodle. The other thing are PHP attributes. They're a reasonably new construct in the PHP language. They came out in 8.0. They make a lot of structures easier to implement and understand. And we're starting to use those more and more in the core LMS as we go along. The link there on the slide of the QR code takes you to a documentation example that shows you a good way of using those, because they're quite cool that they are involved. We've also improved the debugging experience in LMS. So on the slide, if you're a developer or an administrator, this is going to be a reasonably sort of familiar, hopefully not too familiar, but if you've seen an error in LMS, this will be hopefully somewhat familiar. It's what an error looks like if you've got debugging turned up in your environment. You get a summary of the error and you get a stat trace. Now, like everything, this is useful, but it can be better. So what we've done in 4.4 is introduce the whoops library. Now, one day I will be able to say whoops and talk about it without smiling, but my inner 10-year-old is just not going to let me do that right now. So whoops provides a much better debugging experience when you're troubleshooting errors. You still get that error summary and that stat trace there on the left, but you can see on the right with a lot of other information, you can see the line of code that the error relates to in context with other lines of code in that file. And if you actually click on the steps in the stack trace, it will update that view. So you can actually already start to step through the error as it's presented. We've made available a couple of other things in there. One of them is a link to our developer documentation, so you can go straight from the error to see some general information about it, and sort of go from there. And one of the other really cool things, which you'll start to see cycle through in the video hopefully shortly, is there is a link at the top there. You won't be able to read it, it's unfortunately too small, but if you click that link, and you've got it configured, it will open up that file relating to that error straight in your development environment. So you can go straight from viewing the error in environment. Here it comes up now. In my environment, when I clicked open link, that would have opened PHP Storm. So you go straight from the error in your LMS straight to your development environment and start debugging the error. Now, look, admittedly, I am a nerd. I still write Moodle code, even though I probably shouldn't. My boss doesn't like me and tells me to run the team, not write code, and I can't help it. And I find this really cool. But the reason I did want to sort of mention it today is just it's reflective of the efforts that we're doing to improve LMS, not just in the user-facing elements, but sort of under the hood as well, and our commitment as we modernise and advance the platform all the way through. So that's just a reasonably quick overview of some of the things you'll find in 4.4. The QR code on this slide will take you to our release announcement and some of the short videos and things so you can dig into this in a bit more depth. But as I sort of said at the beginning, I did want to spend some time talking about some things that we're working on now that you'll find in future versions of LMS. And one thing I did want to spend some time talking about in sort of reasonable depth is what we're doing with AI and LMS. Now, there's a lot happening in the Moodle LMS ecosystem around LMS, and there's going to be some great presentations over the next couple of days at Moodlemoot around LMS. I was at a Canadian Moodlemoot 2 weeks ago and had a lot of AI presentations as well, and they were all excellent. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the ones over the next couple of days here as well. But I'm just going to give a bit of an update on the AI work that the LMS team has been doing. And I'm going to start by giving a bit of an overview of our approach, the things that we've worked through so far, and then give you a bit of a preview of the things that are going at the AI functionality that will be in upcoming versions of LMS. But before I do get into any specifics around the work we're doing with AI and the approach that we're undertaking, there is one very important thing that we need to sort of reflect on, and that is, what is the problem we are trying to solve? And look, if you've worked with me or hung out with me, you'll know that this is one of my favourite questions. I think probably my team is sick of me asking this. I ask it them all the time. But from a product development point of view, if you're not starting with this, or this is not one of your starting questions, you're going to find yourself sort of on the wrong track reasonably quickly. And there really isn't any doubt that the current sort of evolution of AI is going to have a very big impact on the world, and indeed a very big impact on the LMS space. And it's going to make a lot of things possible that weren't possible before. But AI is a tool, it's not an answer. Like, it will help facilitate solving a problem, but it's not an answer solely into and of itself. So when we talk about adding AI into a platform like LMS, we need to think about what kind of problems we're trying to solve. So for this, we've taken some guidance from our roadmap vision. And if you were at this Moot actually last year, my boss, Maria Scher, the global head of product at Moodle, was spoken in depth about our roadmap. And if you go to our Moodle.org site, you'll be able to see some more information about it. But I'll just give a very quick overview. It's our roadmap vision for LMS is sort of split into 3 areas. And the first is unlocking creativity. So it's where we aim to empower educators and learners to shape their experiences according to their imagination and aspirations. Facilitating collaboration, which is centered around enabling supported and connected learning environments. And optimizing outcomes, which is focused on providing users with the tools they need to optimize their efforts. So when we look at the problems we want to leverage AI to help with, these areas are going to be our guides. In addition to this, we're also informing our design research. As it was sort of mentioned in that fantastic introduction, Martin Dugiamas, our founder, who is also now our head of research and development, has been doing a lot of work in this area, and you may have all some of you may have participated in some of this research and the survey activities that he and the team have put out, and we're using that as part of our inputs into what we're doing, and that research is also going to continue as we evolve. But there are some sort of challenges to integrating AI into a system like LMS. And one of them is we know as humans that we are not very good at predicting the future, especially in the technology space. And you may have seen this slide before. It's one of my favourite predictions of the future from the past, where at the 1900s World's Fair, the prediction was in the year 2000, we won't need to teach students anymore, we'll be able to download information directly into their brains. We didn't get there, obviously. Some may argue we've managed to be able to glue their smartphones to their hands, but we haven't been able to get the information downloaded out there. And, this is a challenge. This not being able to predict the future is a challenge, especially when working with a new technology like AI. But even though we can't predict the future in detail, we do tend to see a common pattern when a new technology emerges. And that sort of follows the pattern of there is generally an initial explosion of the services of a new technology and the types of new technology. And then that's followed by a period of consolidation and evolution, and then finally we reach a standardization. And that standardization can take time. I won't tell you how old I am by telling you what my first mobile phone was, but it took a long time. We've only just gotten there with mobile phone chargers, for example. And in the case of AI, we're very much in that explosion phase still, and even though AI has been around for such a long time, as the intro sort of showed, it's going to be in that explosion phase for a while yet. So to address this challenge, we need to be our approach to be flexible when we look at adding AI to a platform like LMS. And it's not just the technology that's evolving rapidly that you need to take into account. We're already seeing legislative frameworks take place. And one of the first is the EU's AI Act. Now, the EU tends to be first with some of these things, but then they're definitely not last, and you'll start to see other areas, other jurisdictions adopt these same type of things. But the EU AI Act classifies different types of AI and the services that they provide into risk groups. And the level of risk that you're categorised into determines the level of obligation that you need to meet to be in accordance with the Act. And an example, I'll just read a quick excerpt from the Act. It says, educational or vocational training that may determine the access to education and the professional course of someone's life is considered high risk. So what that sort of means, I suppose, translated, is if you're going to want to use AI to determine a student's path through a course, or you're going to want to use AI to assess a student, that is going to be considered high risk and is going to have the highest level of obligation to be compliant with the Act. If you're interested in the EU's AI Act, that QR code will link to a nice primer on it. And if you're really keen, you can go to link from that primer to the Act itself. It's about 450 pages in English, if you're keen. So I suppose the actual legislation that's going to evolve is only going to be one part of a framework. Your organisations and other organisations are also going to have their own requirements around AI if they don't already. So we need to, have a view of how we take these into consideration and position ourselves from an LMS point of view. So what we're going to do from an LMS functionality side is introduce a new AI subsystem to LMS, and I'll talk about what that means. Essentially, we'll be adding core support for AI services to integrate into the LMS and make that functionality available to users. And we've sort of come up with the following summary, or sort of the following mission statement that will help guide that. And that is to provide a consistent and user-friendly experience for users to interact with AI in Moodle LMS while allowing them to continue their teaching and learning activities. And that second sentence I find sort of particularly important because AI is an assistive technology. We don't want to replace anything. We don't want to hinder anything in teaching and learning. We want it to be assistive. Further to that, we want to provide a straightforward integration with various AI providers on the back end, all while adhering to our own Moodle AI principles, as well as the appropriate legislation. Now, what we start to see at a very high level is an AI subsystem design that looks a little bit like this. So we've got all of the AI services available here on the left, and they've probably all been replaced since I've done this slide. Things are moving so quickly. They connect to the LMS via a defined API. In the middle, we have LMS doing all the things that LMS needs to do, and then that AI functionality is being made available to students and teachers here on the right in a consistent way. And it's going to be a consistent way for users and teachers regardless of the source AI system. Sounds easy, right? Well, it turns out there are a few other things we want to sort of start to think about, and I'll talk through some of these. We've already touched on the legislation that will be coming around AI, and it will come to every jurisdiction. But there's already existing legislation we need to be aware of and adapt for, and the privacy and data control legislation is sort of one of the main ones here. The need for reporting is going to be a big part of any solution, and not just reporting from an auditing and compliance point of view, but there's a real opportunity for reports to be quite beneficial for teachers, for example, as well. And as an example of that, if you have an AI service in your LMS in the future that allows your students to interact with your course content and get more information or to summarise it, knowing that a large amount of your students are interacting with AI on a very particular part of your course is going to be very empowering to you as a teacher. It's going to allow you to sort of, focus your efforts on, why are my students using this? Perhaps I need to redesign my course content, or perhaps we need to spend some more face-to-face time on that. So reporting is going to be a really big thing. Access control is something else that very important that we need to consider, and it has a couple of parts. Firstly, there's the need to sort of be able to control what AI services are available to what users in the LMS based on who they are and what they're doing. An example of that is, do you want your students to be able to access AI content while they're taking place? Now, some organisations will want that, some organisations will absolutely not want that, and we need to be able to be sort of configured for both. We also need to be able to provide contextual information to the AI system to help feed things like the AI model's guardrails. So, for example, if we have an AI, like a large language model, that's trained on all of the data in your LMS, or it has access to supplemental information via RAG or some other augmentation mechanism, we need to be aware of that. You probably, don't want a case where a student asks an AI that knows everything about your LMS what the questions on tomorrow's quiz are going to be. Or related to that, and perhaps more seriously, you don't want a student to be able to ask for one of their peers' mobile phone numbers out of that peer's user profile. So we need to make sure that the AI has the relevant contextual information there that it can act. We also need to be able to do things on the LMS side to make sure we're providing it the right information and having that sense of control. So there's always going to be a dual responsibility model there. We also need to support things like training of AIs. In the case of people who want to be able to train things like large language models off LMS, or be able to access LMS data in a nice, structured, contextual, and semantic way. And we also want to support things like RAG, so your augmented retrieval. Any solution needs to be extendable. As I've talked through, the world's AI is very much changing. We need to be able to extend and adapt to that as it goes. And of course, scalability. There's hundreds of thousands of Moodle sites out there that we know of. Some of them are very, very big. Any solution that we add has to work with all of them. So what we end up with is a subsystem design that looks a little bit more like the following. And I'm not going to go through each of these components right now. The point of this slide is just to sort of show that there are several components that are going to be involved in any sort of end-to-end solution, and just to speak to the size of the task that the team are undertaking. What I will do though is sort of spend some time going through just some of the main concepts. And the LMS AI subsystem will consist of three main components, and these are placements, actions, and providers. And this is what we're calling them internally. They're not industry standard terms, at least not yet. We'll see how we go. Now, placements will be the user interface elements and associated workflows that will allow users to interact with AI services connected to the LMS. And this is where it's really going to help enforce consistency. So, for example, it won't matter which AI service you're using to generate images. users will always have a consistent interface and workflow in an LMS. Placements will be LMS plugins, so that'll allow for both us at Moodle and the community to develop new placements as the functionality in AI evolves, and be able to do new things and help solve new problems in the future. And placements will allow users to access what we're calling one-on-one AI actions. And these actions are provided by the AI services connected to LMS and are the specific things you can do with AI. And what actions that will be available for a particular user will depend on what's being configured in the LMS, but also, the user's roles and what they have permission to. It's getting to that access control point that I was talking about earlier. So, for an example, when you're creating a course as a teacher, you could be able to access an action to create an image based on a text description. Or for students, you could be able to use an action to summarize complex text or to translate text into another language. The available actions will be determined by which AI providers the LMS instance is connected to, and these providers are going to be connected by what we're calling provider plugins. Each plugin will make available one or more actions to the LMS, and it's the provider plugin that's the interface between the LMS and the AI service. So, for example, you can have a provider plugin that connects to the OpenAI API to make things an action available, like summarizing text. Or you can have a provider plugin that connects to the Midjourney API for generating an image from description. And provider plugins are going to be the interface that you'll have if you've got your own AI service running on your own infrastructure. So say you've trained a large language model that you want to interface with LMS, writing a provider plugin will be the way that you'll do that. So just as a very quick summary, placements are how users will interact with the AI, so they're your user interfaces, your user experience, your workflows. Actions are the things that can be done, such as generate an image, and the providers are the things that provide the action functionality, such as a connection to the OpenAI API. Now, when I talk about this in Moodle, there are two questions that everybody wants to know. And the first one is, what's the first thing that's actually going to happen in LMS? What's the first thing that's going to land? And I will tell you that, but first I just wanted to sort of talk a little about some of the considerations that we had in doing this. And they were sort of both on the technical and sort of user side as well. So on the sort of the technical side, we wanted something that was complex enough to allow an end-to-end implementation of that subsystem design that we saw, as well as providing a good base that both we at Moodle and the community can develop and iterate on. But we didn't want something in the beginning that was too complex, because then we risk sort of blowing out timelines and not delivering, and then that doesn't help anybody. On the user side, we wanted functionality that delivered value and actually solve a user's need, and that gets back to that very first slide of what problem we're trying to solve. As part of that decision, we looked at the current market offerings, both in the LMS competitor space and the market more broadly. You'll start to see, I think every app you open these days has got an AI button in it. And we also looked at our research activities that I spoke about a bit earlier and how they're guiding us. So the initial functionality that will be landing in LMS will be student-focused, and it'll be allowing students to leverage AI to do things like summarize or explain the content of their courses or activities. It will include the UI interfaces and workflows for students to be able to access this for their course content, as well as some reporting and those other non-negotiable things that we've sort of talked about a bit earlier, like access control. The other thing that it will include is a clear indication of that you're using AI in LMS, and that's very much in line with one of our AI principles. Is in LMS you will always know when you're interacting with AI. It won't be hidden. It won't come up unexpectedly. As a user or an administrator or a teacher, you will always know that you're using AI. It'll also include at least one provider plugin to an AI service. For the short term, we won't be including a large language model or AI directly in LMS. As I said, at least in the short term. Martin and the team, that's something that they're also working on, focused on for the future. The other thing I will mention as part of this is functionality around the creation of text and images was something we did very much consider to do first. It featured very highly in our user research and our market analysis. But when we weighed it up with all of the other considerations, it's something we're doing second. So the student-facing interaction with their content is first, and then the creation of text and images is going to be a very, very close second. The other thing that I will mention, and if we've taken sort of some screenshots of any of these slides that have got images of LMS in them, they're not going to be the ones that are going to be in the final product. They're from real Moodles, they're from our prototypes and our technical spikes and our research activities, but our design team and what we're doing has already moved on since I created this slide deck. What you'll see in the final product will be actually much, much better. So that brings me to the second question everyone wants to know is, when is this going to happen? So in terms of delivery, we're expecting to land initial functionality this October when version 4.5 of LMS is released, and then we're going to be iterating on that functionality over the next sort of several versions of LMS. We're very much in the sort of the early part of the AI journey. Prior to 4.5, however, in fact, very, very soon, we'll be making available a public prototype site, and we're going to use that for some of our research and development activities, but it'll also give you the opportunity to be able to interact and sort of try out some of these things as we continue to develop and prototype things. The last thing I actually will mention on this though is it's worth checking out if you can the plugins that are already available in the Moodle plugins directory around AI. There's some cool ones in there already, and it's really good to be able to see the activities that other people in the community are already doing. So if you can, I encourage you to check out those plugins. Finally, there's just a couple of QR links here. They link to the Tracker Epic, which is where we're sort of central point for the development, as well as our public documentation. These are a really good place to start. They'll evolve and develop as the project evolves and develops, so you'll be able to follow along and sort of see where we're up to, along with the other things that we'll announce. And they're a good source of sort of further information of some of the things that I've talked to today. I'll also have a QR code at the end of this presentation to download the whole thing, so if you've missed any of these, don't worry. Now, AI is sort of one of the major things that we're working on, but it's actually sort of one of many things. It's not the only thing, as cool as it is. So sort of the last sort of thing I wanted to go through today was give everyone a bit of a look at the things that we're working on now that'll be in 4.5, and then also some of the things that will be on versions after that. 4.5 is not far away now. It's going to be released on the 7th of October. It's our next long-term support version, so if your organisation goes from LTS to LTS, the 7th of October is the date that you want to look out for. And the team is very, very busily working on this while I get to travel the world, so thank you for them for all their hard work on it so far. But let's start looking at some features. So again, we're starting on the course page as a student. And what you're starting to see here is the next evolution of the course layout, and you'll have the ability for sections to have subsections. So you can see here in the impact on biodiversity, this section of the course has two subsections, one for reading materials and the other for practice activities. And this subsection functionality will allow teachers to further structure their learning activities and allow students to better understand how their learning fits together and how they, the navigation with their learning materials and activities work. The single view section that we saw earlier will also apply to subsections, so you'll be able to sort of view a single section in its entirety, as well as being able to drill down to a subsection. And again, that's helping just students be able to focus on the things that are important and relevant to them at this time. You can see as I try and click and talk in my video at the same time, you can go from the impact on biodiversity into the practice exercises, and then there we go. That's why I record videos, because I can't talk and click. The subsections will also work really well with the improved navigation. So you can see here I'm just using the breadcrumbs to navigate back through from the subsection to the section to the course level. And you can also see that up on the course navigation on the left-hand side there. For your teachers and course creators, this quick video has how the new creation of courses will work with subsections. So the main change here is when you are adding content to a section, you'll now get a choice between adding an activity and adding a new subsection. And you can also start to see here some of the more improvements we've made to editing sections to make it very easy to see where to add new materials to a course. Again, the QR code on this slide will take you to the tracker that has more information on this work, and that itself has a link to the public prototype. So you can actually use our clickable prototype and navigate this and start to get a play out how this will work for yourself. Over the next several versions of LMS, we're going to be doing a lot of improvements to the assignment activity, and I'm just giving you a very quick initial sneak peek of this. The work itself is very encompassing across assignments. There will be improvements coming to the marking workflow, including PDF grading, as well as improvements to submission management. The submissions management screen is actually what's shown on the slide here. This is an early prototype, it's going to change, but you can start to see we're improving the information that's displayed, so the things that you're available about your student submissions is greatly improved. There's the newer way of finding and filtering students at the top there. You can see at the bottom there's a call out to some of your bulk actions. So that's something you'll see from 4.5 and beyond, of really improving the experience for everybody with assignment. Zooming out again to sort of the site level things. In about 12 or so months ago now, we did a large piece of user research around how we can improve notifications and the types of notifications and things that everyone wants to see in LMS. And we added some improvements in the recent release 4.4 around notifications, and we're going to be introducing more in 4.5. Most notably, in 4.5 will be the introduction of SMS-based notifications, so you'll be able to get a notification straight to your smartphone or non-smartphones, very importantly, via SMS. There'll also be additional notifications available in 4.5, so more events in LMS will cause notifications. The ones that we're adding first and the ones that we're prioritising, and again, informed by that user research. Overall, we'll be working on the user experience and user interface elements of notifications and messaging in LMS, and we'll see more and more improvements in those as we go. On the sort of, I suppose, the development and integration side, there'll be some big improvements to our web services, so the way that you connect LMS to other systems. We're calling them version 2 of our web services, and there's two reasons for that. Firstly is we're introducing API versioning, so there'll be a version 2 in the URI for web services. But more importantly, they're a ground-up rewrite of our web services. The architecture and the code and the way they work, it will be all sort of completely new for version 2. They'll include things like your proper HTTP verbs, like, post and get and put and things, more relevant response codes and proper response codes, and also better discovery and documentation. Around, I suppose, the topic of discovery and documentation, we'll be using the Open API standard for documentation, and we'll be using the Swagger UI to assist with development and discovery, and it's a prototype of the Swagger UI you can see on the slide. We've already started landing some of these improvements in 4.4 and some of the under the hood things, and you'll start to see more of those in 4.5, including the first parts of that functionality. The other thing I will say on this, though, is not to scare anybody, the current web services are not going away anytime soon. Version 2 will be in addition, so you can start using it, but don't worry, you don't have to rewrite your entire integrations when 4.5 comes out. You'll have plenty of time to do that. And look at this, of course, more. There was 287 things in new features and improvements in 4.4. We're on track for about the same in 4.5. I don't have time to talk about them all today, but I'll just sort of touch on a couple of them. 4.5, we're introducing under the hood the Bootstrap 5 framework, which will start to then roll out from 4.5 and beyond. So that'll just allow us to continue to improve our user experience. The Moodle Users Association have sponsored a piece of work to improve user session handling, particularly of interest if you've got a big Moodle site, but even on other Moodle sites it can be an advantage. The way that you work with video and audio media in TinyMCE will be improved, and along those lines you'll be able to record your screen. So the same way by Tiny you can record your webcam and mic now, you'll be able to record your screen. Plus lots of other things that I just don't have time to go through, but I'd love to be able to. But the final thing that I did want to talk about today is the Moodle Experience Lab. So you would have heard me talk a lot about the research activities that we're undertaking, and you'll start to hear me and others talk about that more and more. And the Moodle Experience Lab is a way that you can actually get involved in those research activities and help shape Moodle LMS as a platform. The QR code on the slide will take you to the website where you can find more information, and I do encourage people to sign up. It's not too onerous, we don't talk to you all the time, but it is a really cool way to actually really get involved in the development. And that basically brings me to the end of what I wanted to talk about today. Look, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and also for making it available for me to speak here. I love doing that. Look, the future of LMS is really bright. We're very, very excited about the things that we're working on now and the things that we've recently delivered. I really hope that you found something that excites you in my presentation today. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Matt, for that informative talk.